Hello and welcome everyone. Fantastic to see so many of you joining us here this evening for our school experience webinar. I can see that we've got 35 in so far and the number is still rising. So I'm just going to do a quick intro to the session and hopefully the last few people will join us as I speak. So an introduction to me, for those of you who don't recognise my voice or recognise my face when it appears, I am Lindsey and I lead the recruitment team here at Now Teach. Hopefully my face will appear shortly. There it is, fantastic. Hello everybody. So the purpose of the webinar this evening is all about acting in place of school experience really. So helping you to gain insight into school life and teacher training, and we find that that's something that's really valuable, particularly for career changers who have perhaps not been into school for a number of years and really just want to know what it's like in the classroom, what it's like when you start training, and all of the kind of practical ins and outs. So normally you'd be able to get that experience going into a school and observing some lessons, meeting some teachers, meeting the head of school perhaps, and unfortunately with the current situation with COVID-19 you're not able to do that because of school closures. So what we wanted to do was to give you an opportunity to ask some of our trainees all of the questions that will help you to gain that insight, alongside lots of resources that we're sharing with you as well that you hopefully would have been onto our website to view, and we'll share around the link for that after as well. The webinar is specifically for candidates that are a little bit further along their journey. So everyone that's joining us this evening has been through our Now Teach interview and is quite far along in their thinking about becoming a teacher and starting their training in September. So first of all, big congratulations for getting this far. It's fantastic to, as I say, see so many of you here this evening, and we're really pleased that you've chosen Now Teach and you're with us on this journey. The session this evening will be just an hour, so it's not going to be really long, and it will essentially be in the format of a Q&A, and we've got three fantastic trainees here with us to answer your questions. Before we do kick off with that Q&A, I just wanted to show you a short film about the school day from the voices of our trainees.
Sometimes I'm here at school as early as 6:30 in the morning, which I know it sounds crazy, but you can do a lot of, you can sort out a lot of things when it's quiet in the morning. It's way earlier than what I used to do or even remember, and it's incredible how time flies in the morning.
So 8:30 is kick-off, the first lesson of the day. The younger kids are bouncy, full of beans. I need to calm them down, while the older kids might be more sleepy and need waking up for the day.
At 10:10, I'm thinking about wrapping up the lesson, why I haven't wrapped up the lesson in time, because I've got to run downstairs to the next floor in time for my sixth form tutor group. Will I make it on time? That's what I'm thinking.
We have registration after the end of the first lesson, and that's also known as tutor time. That's where we get together with our form. I have a sixth form, and we talk about some really interesting things. And one thing I've been able to do is tell them about current affairs, a bit about UK politics. I've been able to tell them what I know about Brexit, which has been really interesting, but also give them lots of practical advice. How do you get a mortgage? How do you buy a car? And I found that one of the most satisfying parts of the job.
11 o'clock on a Thursday, I have a free period, so what I like to do is go down to the staff room and spend some time comparing notes with my colleagues, including others who are also doing the training programme this year.
So the day doesn't finish at 3 when the bell rings. I have to visit any kids in detention, ring home to parents, mark their work, plan their lessons for the next day, but by 5 o'clock I am finished. I don't take any work home. I leave the building and I go off to do my other job, my own kids and my own family.
Hello again. So before we kick off with some Q&A, I just wanted to throw a couple of questions your way to all of those who are attending. My first question is going to appear in a poll on your screen. So we just want to get a little bit of an idea of who's with us here this evening. So if you could just pop in, what stage of the teacher training journey are you at? So have you just recently come through our interview? Have you secured an interview? Have you got a place offered to you already? If you could just pop the relevant answer in there and submit that, please. Great, fantastic. Okay, great. So it looks like we've got a mix here this evening. So we've got just over half who have just come through our Now Teach interview. Got a few here who have secured their training place already, so congratulations to you. And a few who have got an interview lined up with a school or training provider. So it should be interesting to hear some of those experiences. Perhaps we'll come on to that with our trainees shortly. Fantastic. And then a second poll for you that we just wanted to check in on is some of your concerns about teacher training. So if we could have the second poll up. So are you concerned about any of the following in starting your journey as a trainee teacher in September? So you can click more than one on this one, I believe. Right, okay, that's interesting. There's quite an even split going on there. It's changing ever so slightly as I talk. Student behaviour seems to be up there as one of the biggest concerns, and also subject knowledge. So hopefully we'll touch on two of those key points during this webinar, which is great. Okay, thank you everyone. Yeah, so student behaviour really taking the lead there. So hopefully our guys can allay your fears. Great, okay. So I'd like to just introduce our three fabulous trainees that we've got with us this evening. So hopefully their faces can pop up on the screen now as well. So we've got Rob, Francis and Helene. Are you there, guys?
I'm here. And yeah, hearing my work.
There you are, fantastic. Great, so I'll just give you the opportunity to do a short introduction to yourself before we go into questions. So it would be great if you could just tell us who you are, where you're coming in from, where you're doing your training, and perhaps where you're based as well.
Who do you want to go first?
You go ahead first, Rob.
I believe we've got a little slide for each of you.
Ah, me. Okay. Hi, everyone. I spent nearly 25 years as an academic working in biomedical engineering at Imperial College and King's College in. During that time, I gradually did more and more lecturing at the university. And as part of that process, I began to become more and more interested in the teaching process. Then I became a dad of two kids. I have an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old during this time. And I became fascinated in the way that they learn and they develop. And hello, can you still hear me? I've got a message on my screen saying I've cut out.
I can still hear you. You're just a little bit pixelated, Rob, but otherwise the sound is okay. Should we perhaps pass over to Helene or Francis and come back to Rob?
Advance the slide. Who's next? Francis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Francis Castle. I went to university many years ago, at Sheffield University. I did Spanish and French at university. When I left university, I joined the army. And my plan was that I was going to join the army for 3 years, and then I was going to leave the army, marry my boyfriend, and get a proper job and do my teacher training at that point. However, I joined the army, as I said, and I stayed there for 30 plus years, and have just left the army last year, back end of last year. So I thought, well, now is the time to go back to my roots and to do what I always meant to do, just a little bit delayed. So that's why I have decided now to do teacher training in MFL, which was my my degree. I'm training with Chester University. I live in Shropshire, and so Chester University is my closest university provider. I decided to go for the core route rather than the school direct route.
Okay. Great, thanks, Frances. And Helene?
Well, again, my name is Helene Jones. I'm from North America, but I am British. I've been over here for quite some time. And for over 30 years, I've been in IT, and I did software design, database management, and decided I needed to change. The world of IT has changed quite a bit, so it seemed fitting I should change too. So I took an interest in teaching, in so much as I got so much satisfaction out of training people. So I wanted to take it that much further along, and it's been a journey and a really interesting one, so I'm really pleased to be here tonight. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Helene. I think we might have lost Rob temporarily, so perhaps we'll come back to him once he reappears. But thank you so much for those intros. So what's great is that we've got 3 trainees here that are doing very different training programs. They're based in different parts of the country and have very differing experiences. So hopefully that will come through in some of the answers. Great, so we do have a sort of core list of questions that we're going to go through this evening, and hopefully they will answer lots that you wanted to hear about, but you do also have the option of submitting your own questions. So in the questions box, which you've already found because I can see a few people posting in there, you can submit your own questions. We've got a little how-to on the screen just in case you haven't yet found it. So thank you for that. And yeah, so if there's anything that you want to hear more about as we're going through or we haven't covered, please just pop your question in there. We won't be able to get around to all of them most likely because we are trying to keep to just the hour this evening, but if there's anything specific to you or anything we can follow up on after, we will do so. Great, okay, so let's kick off with our first question then. Oh, Rob's back. Hi, Rob.
Hello, sorry about that. Bad timing.
No problem. Do you want to just go back to your brief intro of yourself and then we'll kick off with that first question?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the last words you heard were before I got rudely chopped from the session. But basically, through my previous job as a university academic and my own children growing up, I became pretty fascinated in the process of teaching and learning. And so I decided to take on this new challenge of becoming a school teacher. I chose to work in a school very local to where I live in London, and it's a very a school that's considered to be a very challenging school. And I'm doing my training through a provider called ARC Teacher Training, and so I spend nearly the whole of this year in the same school, just with a 2-week experience in a different school. That's all.
Great, thank you. Great, so maybe we'll just stay with you, Rob, then, for this first question. So what was your first day in school like?
Well, the first day in school in September, actually the first 3 days of school were inset days. And so school is obviously a very different place when there's no children around. And it was a very interesting time, actually. I found it really good fun, really nice to get to know the other teachers. And actually I used that time to do 2 things, and I'm very pleased that I did. I used it, one, to find out more about the kind of the day-to-day routines that I would have to do when I was in school. So for example, I'm a science teacher, so I have to look ahead in my schedule to plan practicals with the children. So I used that time to make sure that I had all those, like the forms you had to fill out and the routines you had to do for that, sort of nailed down, so that when the onslaught of teaching hit me later, I'd have all that sorted out. And the other thing I did, which I think has served me well, is I used that time to get to know lots of the other teachers who are even in the science department. So the science department in a secondary school is usually quite a big department. You know, there's 11 teachers in our science department. And so you could easily just hang out with the other science teachers. But I made an effort to mingle with the history and the music and the geography teachers and so on. And it stood me really well because it means that I've got contacts and friends throughout the school now, and some of those people have been really useful to me as the time has gone on.
Fantastic. And same question to you, Helene.
Similarly to Rob, my first day was an inset day that went by very quickly, and then school started the day after that. The first week, I shadowed my mentor, so I was by her side in each one of her classes, and she was a computer science teacher, but she also was teaching math classes, so I had an opportunity to see an experienced professional teacher teaching in 2 different curriculums, which I felt really fortunate to have that opportunity. She was very good. I actually learned a lot about maths that I didn't expect.
Fantastic. And then Frances, you've had a slightly different start to your training, am I right? Because you've been on a PGCE course, which means that you weren't in school straight away. How soon did you start in school, and how did that work for you on your first day?
We spent 3 weeks at university to start with, and we had 3 days of team building exercises and playing like children in a classroom with all the other people from all the other subjects, which was actually a really good icebreaker. But I felt we also had quite a lot of instruction and talking by the academics at university, and actually I think they almost tried to put us off. They tried to paint teaching in a, look, you've got to understand that this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to be challenging. And I felt in many ways they were trying to put us off in order to make sure that we were actually there because we really meant to stay there and be there. So that was very interesting for me because I learned a lot about all the things that I was going to have to make sure I was ready for. And then my first day in school, actually I was there with a number of other associate teachers. There were 3 or 4 of us, and so they had a whole program in the school of introductions, and we had a day on a presentation on SEND children. We had an introduction of pupil premium children. We also did a pupil trail where we were able to watch a pupil in every class that they were going to, so their French class, their history class, their maths class, and see how different, well, it was really interesting to see how the pupils reacted differently in different classes to the different teachers and the different teaching techniques. And that's a really interesting thing to do. And it was also very interesting to see how the different teachers dealt with them. The child didn't know that we were following that child, but the fact that we kept on popping up in their lessons was probably a bit of a clue. But it was really interesting to watch how the different teachers interacted with the children, and how some of the children that were badly behaved in one class, you would then see them in another class being really good, and partly to do with the teachers and the teaching skills. So it was really interesting.
That's a really interesting idea, the pupil trail, and sort of seeing the school day from the perspective of the child as well. I like that idea. And Rob, just a quick question to you, because you're training with ARC teacher training. Did you take part in a sort of summer training program before you began?
Yeah, so as part of my program, there was a compulsory 2-week training course in the middle of the summer. So it started at the beginning of August, which you have to be aware of if you're signing up for that program. But although it was a bit mean to put it in the middle of the summer holidays like that, it was actually a really useful 2 weeks. It was really, really good because it did 2 things. One, it allowed us to bond as a cohort. So there was a whole gang of now teachers as part of that. I think there were over 100 trainees on that course and about 20 or 30 now teachers. And we spent 2 weeks learning lots of classroom management techniques, learning a bit of the kind of background to the process of teaching, but a lot of it was about getting some routines sorted out so that when you went into the classroom, it wasn't too terrifying. Really helpful as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's something that obviously varies between different training providers, but yeah, great to hear that you had such a strong start there. Okay, great. So another question to you. When was it that you did your first lesson? So you talked about the sort of inset days and doing your first few weeks in university. When did you do that first lesson, and what was the kind of transition into that? So I'll go to Frances first for that one.
My first lesson was probably in week 2 at school. I had watched my mentor. I had been in every lesson that she had taken for a few days at the end of the week before, having done all the other introductory bits and pieces. I'd had quite a few conversations with her, and then she asked me if I wanted to do a start or a plenary for a lesson, or whether I wanted just to launch in and do the whole thing, which is what I chose to do. I thought, if I'm in for a penny, in for a pound, just do the whole lot. So she asked me for my lesson plan, which I did over the weekend and gave to her on the Monday morning, and on the Wednesday I was in teaching the lesson. So she had it 48 hours in advance. She had the opportunity to comment back and to tell me to change things or to add things, but she didn't adjust it too much. I think she just wanted me to see how it was going to go. And it was a year 8 class, and actually I was really quite pleased with it. I think it went well. We didn't have any dramas. There was no car crashing went on, and I really enjoyed doing it. And so mine was relatively uneventful, really.
Fantastic. And Helene?
Well, similar to Frances, I think after 2 weeks, I jumped in and taught a full lesson in computer science. I think it was a year 7 class. Most of my lessons were Key Stage 3. Later on in my first placement, I did do Key Stage 4 lessons. So that was year 10. And computer science is much like science, a practical subject. So it was that first lesson was pretty much helping young year 7s logging into their computers and understanding how to even use keyboards and mice, because some year 7s were coming from primaries that didn't have keyboards, and they were using tablets, for example. So it was a very it was a eye-opener in many respects, but I learned to love those year 7s. They're ever so sweet, wide-eyed, and it's such a new experience for them coming out of primary into secondary school.
And so was that a conscious effort from the training provider or the school to sort of introduce you with Key Stage 3 and then progress you to Key Stage 4 lessons?
I wouldn't say conscious so much as a natural progression. This touches on personal subject knowledge. I've been in IT for numbers of years, but when you're in Key Stage 4, they are teaching to a specific examination specification. And I needed time to get familiar with that before I could step into lessons. So I had to teach myself a few things that I hadn't looked at for a while, and some things I hadn't even looked at before. So, but that's one of the exciting parts of doing this training, is that I'm always learning. I'm always learning about my subject. I'm always learning about how to teach. I'm always learning about myself. So.
Fantastic, thank you. And Rob, when did you teach your first lesson? When did that come in?
So it seems like such a long time ago now. It was very near the beginning of that first term. It was probably about 3 or 4 days in, because with my training program, I'm in that school for the whole year. They kind of treat the trainees more as if we're a member of staff from the beginning. So I got my timetable on day 1. I knew which classes I was going to be teaching. And I must have had about a week to worry about my first lesson before I got to it. They gave me, my very first lesson was year 7. It was what I like to refer to as the nurture group. And I got very excited when I got given this, because they have 4 lessons a week and I was going to be their only science teacher, only 16 of them in the class. I thought, this is nice. Those lessons are the toughest lessons I have to teach, to be honest. In my first lesson, I was very, very excited. I'd been looking forward to this for a long time, and I think I let my excitement get the better of me a little bit. I get a bit over enthusiastic anyway, and on this day I must have been completely hyper. I had them, by the end of the lesson, I was teaching them how to make paper aeroplanes. I've lived to regret that. In my next school, I will be a grumpy teacher for 2 weeks. I will not be enthusiastic until I've set the routines in my classroom. But nobody, you learn. I got too excited in that first lesson. It took me a long time to then get them back under control, many weeks, in fact.
Did they just go crazy with the paper airplanes? What happened?
Well, to be honest, it was a good start in that I built a lot of relationships very quickly with that class, but a lot of them see me more like their dad or their granddad rather than their science teacher. And that means it doesn't bode very well for discipline in the classroom.
Sure.
You know, I have a little gang. Yeah, there's a balance, there's some boundaries, and I don't think I'd appreciated that at that stage of my teaching. You know, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you made about how you thought that having that smaller class as well would be beneficial, and that was sort of 16 or so pupils. What for each of you is sort of your average class size?
30 for me.
25 to 30.
Yeah, most of my other classes are 25 to 30. It's just that one group.
Yeah, great. Okay, and just another quick question off the back of that. What made them the nurture group?
Well, it was based on their prior attainment from primary school. And the fact, you know, out of those 16 kids, 12 of them English is so 12 of them English isn't their first language. So there's a lot of challenges in that classroom.
Okay. And so obviously that leads nicely on to my next question, which is around behaviour management. So you know, as you said, kind of you need to set those boundaries, and you you know, you had some challenges there with that group. What has been your best behaviour management techniques that you've learned through teacher training? And I'll go from sort of right to left again on my screen. So Rob, and then along to Helene.
Okay. Well, as part of the ARC teacher training program, they have, you know, they have really taken the behaviour management. You know, they do this very seriously. They teach us a whole raft of techniques that kind of scale from really low impact, you know, very gentle techniques, right through to the kind of high scale weaponry that you use at the end of sanctions and so on. And you know, we're trained, they try to train us to use these in an appropriate way so you don't escalate the arms race too quickly. And there's some really nice tricks in there that I really do practice in my classroom, and without them it would be difficult. But the question is, what's your best behavior management technique? Well, I can explain something to you which I think is really, really interesting. One of the things you find often in the classroom is you'll have a child who perhaps you've asked the classroom to be quiet. You've given them a direct instruction, and there's one or two children that don't follow that instruction. And if, of course, you call them out and you say their name and you approach them directly or call them out in front of the class, quite often that child will push back. You know, they'll say, "Oh, I was only talking because so-and-so was talking to me," or "Why are you always picking on me?" You know, that kind of stuff. So you end up in these confrontational situations with that child. And one of the techniques we were taught was, instead of calling out that child who's talking, you say, after asking for silence and you haven't got the silence, one of the things you do is you say, "I can still hear somebody talking in the classroom." You don't say who it is, but you can just say, "There's still someone talking in this classroom." And that child who's talking will then know that you know they're talking, and it gives them a chance to correct their behaviour before you have to sanction them. And I'd forgotten to use this for a while, and there was one particular girl in my Year 7 group who was causing me a lot of trouble. And then one lesson I suddenly remembered this technique that I'd forgotten about, and I started using it. It worked brilliantly. I didn't get into a confrontation with her. She went quiet, and I was really proud of this. And I used it for a few more lessons over the rest of the week, and it worked brilliantly. And then one day she was talking again, and I said, "I can still hear somebody talking." She piped up and she said, "Sir, you know my name." So it only worked for a certain amount of time. But I guess my point is that there are loads of little techniques that your training provider will teach you to help with behaviour. And sometimes when you first hear them, you think, "That's weird. I'm not sure that I can see the logic in that." But you kind of have to suspend your disbelief and go with them. And most of them are really powerful things. Another quick one that I really like is narrating the positive, which sounds really cheesy. But if rather than telling the bad kids off, you just point out the good things that the other kids are doing, it works wonderfully. It even works around the kitchen table at home.
Fantastic. So tips for behaviour management at home as well. Great. And I expect that sometimes it's trial and error with some of these. So I assume that, you know, some of them that suggested work and some don't work, and you just have to kind of give it a go.
Also it's about your own personality too. Some of them just work better. You can't be anybody but yourself. So if it doesn't suit you, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Helene, how about you?
Well, I will echo much of what Rob said. My training provider has emphasized behavior management in every core training that I've attended, and it has been so beneficial. So I would, I just assure all of the future trainees out there, your training provider will help you develop the skills and the tools to create what for me has been almost like a new persona. There is an authoritative voice that I've had to learn how to develop. I've had to create a body language and a capacity to command attention, things that I never imagined myself doing months ago. I knew I had to develop them. I just didn't know how they would manifest. And so they're coming into being, and sitting here reflecting just now to prepare myself to answer these questions, I have developed a certain amount of competency already with the behavior management techniques. So two of my favorite is the countdown. So if you have some disruptive noise in the room, it's getting a little out of control. 5, 4, 3, and you count down and you command their attention, and they know by the time you get to 1, everyone's quiet. And that works across all years, from the 7s right up to the 11s. And the how to deal with talkback is a very subtle set of techniques. Some will say you just ignore it completely. You know, you give your directive and then you walk away. You never say please. You always say thank you. You return your focus back to the work. Thank you. You walk away and you don't let any talk back, you know, hook you back in. However, if there is talk back, one of my training providers suggested this. It's the maybe but. Well, miss, she was talking to me and that may be, but right now we are all concentrating on our work. So it just sort of undercuts any sort of energy that's trying to push against what it is you're
diverting it rather than shooting it down. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Frances, what's your best behaviour management technique?
Again, I echo what the other two have said, and of course, you know, having spent 30 odd years in the army, behaviour management discipline shouldn't be a problem to me, should it? I mean, it should be dead easy. But sadly, that is not always the case. I think one of the issues we deal with as trainees is that we're teaching somebody else's class, and so you watch what they do. And sometimes what they do is really effective, and sometimes you think, well, it's not as effective as all that. But you know, it's difficult sometimes to do absolutely your own thing when you're dealing with somebody else's class. So that's why I really look forward to next year when I have my own classes and my own children, and I can be consistent, because I think consistency is absolutely what they need. But when you're popping in and teaching a lesson and somebody else is teaching a lesson, and there isn't necessarily consistency all the time from the same person doing the same lesson, I think that's sometimes problematic. But I think the countdown, you know, is 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, and then wait and stay there waiting until everybody's quiet, and you just wait and you look around and you smile. You don't look harshly at people, you just smile as though I can wait forever. But you know, especially if it's before break time or before lunch, it's really, really powerful then, because they know that you can keep them in. If they waste 2 minutes now, that is the same. So as long as you don't have to spell that out to them, but as long as they get the fact that you're serious, and as Helene says, it's an absolute act. You have to reinvent yourself and be a persona that, listen, you're not necessarily feeling it inside, but you've got to be that person on the outside.
Yeah, exhibiting an outward calm, I guess. How, as someone who has done a couple of different placements in different schools, how have you found the sort of approach to behaviour management has differed, and have the school itself had a lot of influence on how you manage behaviour in class?
My first school had a really, really good behaviour management, but everybody across the whole school absolutely had it. They had it nailed, they had it written down everywhere, they had cards, they had all sorts of tools that they would ask the child if they met them somewhere and found that they weren't wearing their tie straight, or their jacket was, or their jumper was their shirt was untucked or something. They would say standards card, and they would sign their stand, and it was all done all the time by everybody. Got to the next school, not nearly as organised, not nearly as well known, and consequently, I was, you know, shocked, I suppose, in the first few days by the amount of answering back that went on, and also the amount of, but also I learned that the ignoring the answering back was more powerful than the getting into an argument, because they got into an argument about it and it keeps on going backwards and forwards like a ping pong, whereas, you know, you ignore it, you carry on, and then if you need to, you grab someone in at the end and say, right, you stay behind and I need to have a quick word with you and let's talk about this. So very different in different schools. And that's just 2 schools I've been in.
Yeah, and Helene, I know that you've, I think, moved between schools as well. Is that a similar experience for you?
Yes, I'll add an interesting insight into my second placement. They're both members of the same multi-academy trust. They have the same behavior management policies, roughly. But in my second placement, because it was a rural village college, they couldn't do after-school detentions. So they had to do all of their detentions within the day's structure. So that created different administrative tasks, different approach to using detentions. So that was interesting to know. Quite frankly, all the kids had to be on a bus to get home because it was so rural. So you couldn't keep them afterwards. But consistency of behavior management policy, having the entire staff aware of it, behind it, and supportive of it is so important. I think I'll go so far as saying, in the future, when you're looking to apply at a school, as equally important as it is to do an interview and have a tour, it's to study the behavior management policy of that school. Do you agree with it? Is it something that is supportive of the teachers, supportive of the departments, and do you resonate with it? It's because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult, because that's what it's there for. It's there to support the teachers, to support the creating of a learning environment.
That's really great advice. And am I right that you can find that on the school's website, the behaviour management policy? Fantastic. So just while we're on the subject of challenges, so obviously behaviour management came up as a key concern there for the candidates sort of attending this webinar. What are some of the other big challenges that you faced sort of from day one in training, and perhaps as a follow-up, if you have, how did you overcome them? Let's go to Francis on that one.
Learning children's names is the most important thing, and it's a challenge. When there's 30 in the class and you're teaching a year 7, a year 8, a year 9, year 10 class, learning their names is so important, but it's a challenge, and you've just got to sit there with your seating plan and just sit and learn it. But the other thing is the IT, is the interactive whiteboard, which for me was a completely new piece of kit which wasn't there in my day, and so it's getting to grips with the IT, and so knowing that when you go into the class you can plug in your computer, you know what to do here and what to do there, and how to get your YouTube clip sort of going to play at the right time, or go into the interactive resources that you want to use. It's getting all of those things organized so that you're not flapping, because as trainees, again, we feel like it's all got to be perfect and that you can't afford to say, just hang on a minute, I'll sort myself out here. Whereas real teachers, I mean trained teachers, they do that all the time, but I think perhaps we put too much pressure on ourselves to be too perfect or too smooth and too seamless.
Absolutely. And Rob, how about you? Biggest challenges from day one?
Well, I think it's interesting. I'd kind of, some of what I'm about to say, Helene's kind of touched on it already. I think you have to be able to fit in with the ethos of the school. So the kids in my classes are pretty challenging, and you'd think that would be my biggest challenge. And there's a lot of really troubled children in my classes, but actually, even though they manifest with some atrocious behaviour, that's not what bothers me about my school day. My school day is made harder by some of the ways that the school is run. And so, one of the things I've realised over this year is that I won't stay in the school that I'm in now. I will move on to another school because it doesn't suit me, that school. And so that's been a challenge for me. It took me quite a long time to realise that was the problem. But I don't really see eye to eye with some of the ways that this school is run. And I've had the opportunity to spend some time in another school as part of my training programme. And I've been very fortunate that I've got a job in that school. And I think I will fit, I kind of spotted almost instantly that this is a school that I will fit into better. And I'm really looking forward to going back to school once they reopen because of that. So, yeah, so my biggest challenge was kind of getting on with the management.
Great, and congratulations on securing your place in the school that you do want to be in as well.
Yeah, so it's a nice feeling.
Great, fantastic. And then Helene, same question to you, biggest challenge?
Well, it's similarly to Robert, but with a different twist. I'm from North America. I was educated in North America. I did my undergraduate degree in North America. I found I spent a considerable amount of time decoding my experience. I remember at one point being sitting in the staff room and saying to myself, form? What do they mean form? What does form mean? I didn't have a clue what form meant. And then I went to form and I realized, oh, North American translation, it's homeroom. It's the first period of the day. It's when all the students come together and they have their first registration. So I spent some time having to understand the education system real time, being fully immersed in it. My training provider, again, very, very, thorough. We had a whole day where we studied the education structure and the key stages and the progressions and the curriculums, which was very, very helpful. So, and I think when you think about it, maybe several of you future trainees, school has changed a lot probably since when you attended. So it might be worth your while to get on the Department of Education's website ahead of time and do some reading and find out about how things are run and why, and explore how the government is assessing and trying to figure out how students progress. As a whole raft of programs that are being run, and you're gonna have to learn it all. You're gonna have to know all the language and all the terms, and so big challenge for me, constantly having to translate and understand my experience and put the theory to the practice in the moment. And yeah.
And improving that understanding of education and schools in the current day is definitely something that trainees can do before they start, isn't it? So as you say, sort of going on to DFE website and looking at various articles and bits and pieces and some of the resources that we share with candidates.
And you lovely lot at Now Teach, you're a terrific resource. And I haven't had a chance to say how important your input has been.
Well, I'm going to come on to that in the next question, so I'll let you wax lyrical about us then. Just to touch on, so Francis mentioned there the technology and the IT, so I've been nudged by the team to share with you that actually that's something that we can support with at Now Teach as well, and we do a bit of an intro session to IT before you start. So if you're not particularly worried about that side, then don't worry, we'll put you back. Great. So my next question on the point of support is who actually supports you in school and outside of school as well? Who's your support network? Let's go to Helene on that then.
Well, yes, I preempted it a bit, didn't I? And I mentioned Now Teach, and personally, Now Teach has been, wow, just irreplaceable. I have benefited so much from the support I've been getting from Now Teach, and will continue to get, because if I'm understood correctly, you're going to be right behind us all the right way through our first year, if I remember correctly. So thank you very much. I'm going to take you up on it then, I'm sure, because we are unenviably, the 2019 cohort is probably going to go into the most unusual and unprecedented NQT year in history, when you think about it. No guarantee we'll even have classrooms to step into. We don't know yet. We just really, everything is so open-ended at the moment. Who else supports me while I'm on my training? Well, my SCIT has been a tremendous source of support. I have a professional tutor. All of the instructors in the core training, they're available to me by email, some by telephone if I have questions. I have had mentors in both of my placements, but I was mentored by the entire department, because you can imagine, well, there aren't many computer science secondary school training teachers, so everybody takes an interest in making sure that we get the information we need and the support we need, which I've been very grateful for. And I am fortunate in that, as I'm placed with the Australia Multi-Academy Trust schools, they also have in-house professional development. So I have a professional development mentor or tutor provided by the Multi-Academy Trust, who leads weekly professional development training as well. And last but not least, my other trainees are such a terrific and important source of support, because I can't tell you how many phone calls I've been when you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. And it's like, yes, I understand, I'm losing mine too. So you get that support as well. Don't worry, you'll get your minds back. It's momentary.
Great, thank you. Rob, who supports you?
So in school, I have a coach who is a teacher. He's actually the head of the art department, and he will come and observe one lesson that I teach every week, and we have a session sometime later in the week where he helps me go through the what happened in that lesson, and we discuss how things can move forward. And that's really from a kind of a teaching technique point of view, because obviously he's not a subject specialist in my subject. I have a weekly video call with a subject specialist who helps me in developing my ability to plan lessons, which is really, really useful. And him and I have developed, a really, really good working relationship. And the great thing is that the virus has had no impact on that, because it was already online. So we've been carrying on as if nothing had happened. Out as part of my training program, every Thursday afternoon we have training where we have no teaching, where we go to another school and basically become pupils, whilst a tutor will give us some either subjects specific or classroom management or some pedagogical training of some sort. And just as Helene said, one of the things that's been really important to me, supporting me in school, has been the fact that I've been lucky enough to train in a science department where there are 3 other science trainees, another now teach and 2 other trainees, and the 4 of us we've supported each other immensely through this year. It's been really, really important to have that support, and we've all become really good friends through the process as well. So it's been a really great experience. That.
Yeah, it must be really learning and training alongside others. Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, and as I said before, science departments, we're fortunate because science departments are usually a bit bigger, so it's it's pretty good to be able to have 4 trainees in one department. So it's been great.
Absolutely. And Frances,
well, I've had 2 schools, but in both of my schools, my mentor has been really, really supportive, and I have. I think you can't underestimate how important it is to make your mentor your best friend, whether or not that's naturally going to happen or not. But it is really important to be interested in your mentor, to ask them questions about their family, to just get to know them really well, because they are. If you don't get on with your mentor, then I think that would have a really difficult impact. And I know that some of the fellow trainees on my course have had 1 or 2 little issues with their mentors, and that has, you're there for months, and it goes on and on and on. And so you really, really need to be really friendly with your mentor. For me, it was very easy to do. My mentors are both lovely ladies, but also the department for the MFL is a very small department. There's only 3 or 4 members of the department maximum. And so it's a very, very tight-knit organisation, and I have been taken right into the department. I've been all hands on deck. I've been available to do anything that needs to be done, like put a display on a wall, to be there for whatever has to be done, to be an absolute member of the team, and then they will support you, and they continue to support me now. And when I was doing my job interviews recently, I asked them to have a look through my lesson plan, and they had a look at it, and they gave me a few bits of advice, and they continued to support me there as well. So that was really important. I've got a university tutor as well, who is my subject specialist. Lovely lady, very supportive, but I haven't gone to her for the support that I have gone to the school mentors for. And then lastly, I guess, other than now teachers as well, but I think that's been said by Helene, that the fellow members of the course, and I'm in the MFL. There's 16 of us doing MFL. There's 150 on the course in total. In the MFL, I'm the oldest by quite a long way, and quite a lot of them are 23, 24, 25-year-olds, same age as my oldest son. So I was a little bit worried that I was going to be a little bit out on a limb to start with there, but I haven't found that at all. We have a WhatsApp group, and daily, and especially now, actually even more so now, people are coming on saying, oh, what does someone think about this? What do you think about that? Can anyone help me with this? And there's always somebody who can help you, or who has already done a lesson on the thing that you've got to do a lesson on, or who's already had a particular technique. Because one of the ladies is actually a native French speaker as well, and she can help with, oh God, how do you say such and such, and she'll come up and at the moment we're doing conversation classes with the WhatsApp group from university. There's a Spanish class once a week and a French class once a week, where we just all plug in and have a conversation with each other in that language. Just keeps us going and keeps us on track.
Fantastic, thank you. So it sounds like an awful lot of support across the board, and just the structure of that slightly changes depending on who you're training with and where you're training. But ultimately, you'll always have that mentor in school and some sort of subject specialist, and then also the wider support that Now Teach offers, which is great to hear that you've had such a great experience with that as well.
And it's been particularly good for me because I'm in Shropshire, and I'm not. Most of the Now Teach events tend to be down sort of London centred, but I'm in Shropshire. One or two things in Birmingham, but it's been more and more difficult. It's been quite difficult for me to actually attend events. But this online experience I've had over the last few weeks has been, especially brilliant for me. So I think if you're not based in the south and you're a little bit further afield, this online experience has been brilliant, and I've really benefited from it hugely.
That's great to hear, and it's actually for those who are incoming in 2020 in September, we were already planning to sort of upscale what we were doing in terms of remote distance support and doing things online, and obviously now with coronavirus that has really ramped up. So if there is anyone sort of on the line here who is a little bit further afield and worried about that, we can still support you. So we are quickly running out of time, but just a few questions to follow up with that have come from our audience. So actually something that came up a little bit earlier was to do with, and while we're on the subject of being online and doing things online, I understand, Frances, did you interview for an NQT position online? Did that happen?
I did. I was able to go to the school on the last Friday just before close down. So I went to the school, I had a tour around the school, I did a few tasks, I had a pupil interview with a couple of the students, and I had to do a marking task. But the actual interview was the following Wednesday, and by that time we were all locked down. So I sat in my jacket and my smart gear in my kitchen, and the others, there was the headmaster, the head of department, and the PA to the headmaster, all in their various living rooms or whatever, in their t-shirts. And I had to do a lesson plan. I had to produce a lesson plan the day before, and then I had to talk through my lesson plan, and I had to answer questions on my lesson plan, and then I had the normal questions from the headmaster about SEND and about what I would do in certain situations. But it was an honour. But now I think I've seen a few more jobs coming up being advertised, and I guess that's how they're doing it all.
Yeah. And we have a number of people on the line here who will have interviews lined up that are going to be remote. So yeah, so it's great to hear that has been a process that you've done and was successful.
The difficult thing is you can't get a feel for the school and all of the staff, because it's chatting to the staff, walking around the school and chatting to the pupils and seeing what the rapport is like between the teachers and the pupils. But I guess there are other ways of finding that out if you just have to dig a bit deeper, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know how things will change, and schools might reopen, so you can do that bit of getting to know the school a little bit later down the line as well, which is great. Okay, just a question that's coming from the audience, and I'll just combine it with something that I'd like to hear a little bit more on. So subject knowledge is something that is a concern for many career changers. So either sort of going back to a subject area that they're spent a few years away from, or they're not quite sure if they're up to speed. How, and I'll open this out to anyone who'd like to answer, how did you go about getting up to speed in your subject area, and did anybody do a subject knowledge enhancement?
I did a subject knowledge enhancement course. It was part of the my acceptance conditions for my seat with my training provider. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was so much fun, and I made reference earlier to the GCSE curriculum, and that was referenced and supported by my subject knowledge enhancement course. So much of what my enhancement course was addressing was a GCSE centered curriculum. and yeah, very
And
useful.
what was the sort of structure of study for that? Was that online, sort of in your own time? How did that work?
It was online in a really well-designed virtual learning environment. I had a tutor who oversaw my work, marked my work. We had correspondence about the projects that were part of the knowledge enhancement course. And I did it over the first term in parallel with all the other work that I did. And I'll just say that organization is key.
Absolutely. Time management, organisation, time management. Rob, over to you.
Yeah, so I did a knowledge enhancement course too. It was a prerequisite for my training provider too. The interesting thing about being a science teacher is obviously we have a huge curriculum of physics, chemistry, and biology, all the subjects. And you know, I have a background in physics. I have a PhD in physics, and they would only let me do the knowledge enhancement course in physics because I'm a physics specialist, even though I teach chemistry and biology through the entire school. Which I thought was really quite ironic and ridiculous. So I did kick up a bit of a fuss, and they let me do a little bit of biology and chemistry as part of my knowledge enhancement course too. But I would just like to say that so if there's people who are training next year who are going into science, it does feel a bit daunting because the curriculum is immense. But one of the joys of being a science teacher, and I'm sure the other teachers who are on the panel who aren't science teachers will probably agree with this as well, but one of the joys of being a teacher is that you're getting to think about all these things that you're interested in anyway. You know, the reason we're becoming teachers is we love our subjects, and actually I really want to learn about all that chemistry and biology and physics I haven't had a chance to think about for years. And so it's not really a chore. It's, you know, it's part of the fun of being a teacher is having to think about all of these things. So I wouldn't see it as a problem. It's like one of the benefits.
Absolutely. And Francis, was there anything that you did sort of outside of an SKE to get up to speed in your subject area?
I couldn't do an SKE because I had to continue working sadly until the last minute until I arrived at university. But languages are slightly different, I guess, because it's not whole subjects and whole chunks of knowledge that you've got to have, and a whole, you know, Oxbow Lakes this week we've got to teach that. It's all a whole series of building blocks that you've got in there. Now, it's a long time since I did my degree, but I have kept up my languages a little bit, but not to the extent, you know, not all that much. So I suppose practicing a bit, listening to films on TV, and you know, those sort of activities I did a bit of, and I had to learn a bit of extra vocabulary like greenhouse gases and recycling and all of these modern things that you didn't have to learn about when I so there's a whole load of vocabulary and a lot of trendy or sort of slang vocabulary that they use all the time now that have become normalized that I didn't learn when I was at school. So I've had to sort of pick up on that, but it's great learning new vocabulary and learning new things and how to say different things. And so yeah, like the others, it's part of the enjoyment, but I don't think anyone should ever worry about it, because if you've done a degree in a subject, you've got enough there, even if it was a long time ago, you've got enough there to know to go into a GCSE level classroom anyway, if not an A level classroom. And I think what they will tend to do is give us up to GCSE first, and then possibly up to A level, you know, once we've done a little bit more. I think, and it's fine. Don't worry about
it. Chill out, don't worry about it. Good advice. And just one final quick question from the audience before I ask you for your sort of top tips to leave the 2020 cohort with. Are the vast majority of the colleagues that you work around, are they a lot younger than you? And has that been a problem? How have you found that, if so? To anyone?
Yes, they've been younger. And one of the interesting experiences I've had being a mature trainee is that often there's an immediate perception of me that, oh, she knows what she's doing. She obviously, you know, we don't, you have to tell her what to do here. She's mature, but actually I'm green, completely a novice. You must tell me because I don't know. So sometimes I had to make extra effort to reach out and let people know that I need some input on this. So it's worthwhile to keep that in mind. But I will say, even though in my first placement, my mentor was younger than me, she was an excellent teacher. So one of the benefits of being mature and coming from other careers is that we understand professionalism, and we can bring a sense of professionalism into that training environment, into that dynamic. And I think developing mutual respect is something that just can happen really readily.
Yeah.
Our career experience. So,
and you've always got something in common with them, whatever age they are. I mean, my mentor has a daughter called Isla who's 1 year old. I have a daughter called Isla who's 21 years old. But we had something in common, and it's a good starting point. And you get in there from the beginning, and she's become my friend, and I think that's what it happens in school, as long as as long as you're not up yourself. And I think that's probably what we've got to be aware of in our. And I was probably going to say this is my top tip at the end, but I'll do it now. That we've come possibly from being senior leaders or being higher up in an organization than we are now, right down at the bottom again, and we've just got to understand that and make sure that we respect everybody else around about us, and we don't know it all, and we don't go in there and tell them how to run their strategic planning and how to run their business, because they don't actually want to know. It may be downstream, there'll be some little nugget somewhere that I will have learned in the army somewhere that will be really useful, but just at the moment I tend to zip it and just be a sponge and accept all the advice that people give to me without saying, oh yes, of course I knew that. Because
fantastic. I'll take that as a segue into the words of wisdom to leave our future trainees with. So thank you for that, Frances. Any final words of wisdom from Helene and Rob, or advice going forward, either in terms of top tips for preparing for September 2020 or for when they start?
Well, I think the other two panelists will concur. Look after yourself. Make sure that you get the sleep you need, eat the food that's good for you, get the rest, keep your friendships in good repair, and yeah, look after yourself during this journey, because it will be demanding. It's going to completely reshape you, but in wonderful ways. And yeah, just one day at a time.
One day at a time. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. Just a massive thank you to Frances, Helene and Rob. I'm sure that all of our attendees have really, really appreciated your words of wisdom and your insights into teacher training. I hope that the final terms, I think we're 2 terms in, aren't we? So final term of your training is just as great, and congratulations on your NQ2 positions that you'll start in September as well. Thanks so much for taking the time, and thank you to everyone who's attended. It's been great to have you here. We'll send around an email to follow up, get a little bit of feedback, and follow up with any direct questions that have been asked. As I mentioned, we do have lots of school resources, insight into the classroom, and videos of lessons, etc., online. So we'll share that with you again to make sure you've got access. And as ever, if there are any direct questions, just get in touch with us in the recruitment team. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.